Hey guys, what's up? McJibbin Reacts. Connor here, ready to react to another. Yeah, I got lazy, so I'm laying down while recording it. I got my little globe here. Still been working on the audio and video, audio output settings. Hope I'm getting better at it. And another new. Who recommended this to me? It was CJ. CJ wasn't the original, but I'm gonna find that out right now. How's your guys' day going? Is it doing good? I think it was on this video. Good. If bad, then bad. BRSNRTHRN. Feature History is another interesting historical channel. Its style is different though. Got some reacts, some CJ. CJ's, you might hear me mention him in a lot of videos. He's just a common commentator. A common commenter. And I take his input seriously. I like to react to his videos that he recommends. And both of them recommended Feature History. Shout out to you guys. And I asked if you guys preferred. CJ at least responded. The other did not. BRSNRTHRN has did not, but he was the first to recommend Feature History. It looks pretty familiar. I definitely haven't seen a lot. I don't know if I've ever seen a full video of one of theirs, but I found the Opium Wars, which I am extremely interested. I picked Opium Wars as the first one. It was one of the first I saw, more recent on the channel. But the Opium Wars I find fascinating. And honestly, I think that they tie in. All right, so I got my globe here, and I got my little mini whiteboard. I gotta explain something. My little globe here. So Opium Wars occurring hither from here, India, British colony, over to China. India or Britain is trying to do the same to China that it did to India, which was colonize it, I think, after the Dutch and the French failed to do so. And a lot of riches in China, just like there are in India at the time of the Opium Wars, and pretty much shows how brutal the British Empire was and how dominant it was towards this time. Opium Wars. Don't laugh at me if I get way off, but I think I'm gonna guess is around the 18. Oh God, I'm looking like an idiot. 1870. One of the Opium Wars. When off the Opium Wars. $1839. I was way off. But excuse me, voice crack. Just the way that Great Britain, China pretty much said, no, we don't need anything from you. We have everything we need, and we don't want all of your religion and churches and your influence in our culture and society. And Britain said, well, that's not happening. We're just gonna sell opium, and to the point where so many people in China were addicted to opium, where it was a national crisis, and they said no to British to importing opium. So now Britain didn't have anything to import to China, to that lucrative market. And Britain, Great Britain, British Empire isn't gonna take no for an answer, and so they go. I believe there's a second Opium War, but I think in all cases it ends badly for China, where they have to concede. I think there's even this one crazy moment where a few British higher-uppers sail up some Chinese river to I don't know if it's the Yellow River, to see the emperor directly, which is just unheard of. Just not an option if you're in China at the time. And so it's really just Britain being a bully and forcing China through military superiority to open its doors, and I can't wait to learn what I just said that is wrong. I hope isn't too much, but also learn a lot more about it. Very interesting time. I think this all connects into a lot of recent things too. I think Hong Kong can even kind of be connected to this. I've said enough. Let's get into it. Feature history, original video down in the link below at the top. Check them out. Leave a like and subscribe. Hit that bell icon to see when my next video comes out. Let's go. Feature history, First Opium War.
In the wilds, we find nature's rare gift, the curiosity stream. Found nesting inside are thousands of documentaries, old and droid, for 26% off using the link curiositystream.com.
Get that money, man.
/feature history. And if we wait just to the end of the video, we may yet find out more. Hello and welcome to Feature History, featuring the 19th century prequel to the War on Drugs, the War for Drugs. This is actually the second time on Feature History we'll be going over the Opium Wars. But given the fact...
So again, I can see the video both here and here, so if you see me switching, don't worry, I'm not missing anything. Just kind of my neck gets tired and I'll kind of switch here, so I can see both ways. So yeah.
That these wars were pretty much the beginning of modern China and Far East Asia as a whole, I thought it deserved better than a crappy video made by a 15-year-old. So instead, have a crappy video made by a 19-year-old. In this video, we'll be going over the First Opium War, covering the incidents and impotence that opened the Middle Kingdom to the west and a century of humiliation. Then, if you'd believe it, the next video will be going over the Second Opium War.
I'll be watching that for sure.
In the 18th century, the Manchu Qing dynasty had been ruling for over 100 years, mostly unchallenged and enjoying ultimate regional power. With the largest population in the world, the Qing's wealth and production dwarfed that of any other nation, and that means yes, even the Europeans. The Qing emperors looked almost exclusively inward on their kingdom. It was totally self-reliant, and trade with Westerners.
I don't want to pause too much, I promise. I just want to put in one more point, and I've said in a few other videos, where there's this book. I have the book over there, like Guns, Metals, and Steel, or something else. I'm too lazy to go and pick it up right now. But about how the beginning is these people, Europeans working in, I believe it's Papua New Guinea, which is, I have my globe, which is right here, right above Australia, Papua New Guinea. Very poor, but in money, but a very traditional society. And how the beginning of the book was one of the European men walking down a beach with one of the indigenous Papua New Guineans. And the Papua New Guineans asking, why was it that the Europeans were the ones to go around the world and conquer and conquest and a lot of cases steal and rape and whatnot. The world, like, why were they the ones to do it and not others? Why did they develop all the technology to dominate their opponents militarily? And it seems to be that, it seems to me to be that Japan is another good example, which I'll use, is that Europe is just, it's full of, I shouldn't say full, it's very lacking in a lot of natural resources. And when they're starting to become more warlike and more technologically efficient in Europe, they need these things, and they need these luxuries like silk, which was made by silkworms in China. It was a heavily guarded secret for a long time. Silk was hugely valued, and it would make its way towards, Arabia and eventually to Europe or through shipping. And so they kind of had the necessity to go out and get natural resources and, food and trade and import food and whatnot, whereas India and China especially, and I'll get into Japan, these are places that just, they have everything they need in their own nation, and so they're very self-reliant, and they don't need others, whereas Europeans are very non-self-reliant. And Japan is the same way. A lot of the World War I and the the Russo-Japanese War, where the Japanese end up surprising the world by winning in the late 1800s or early 1900s. They needed more researches. Japan has a lot of people. They were starting to develop, and they needed more resources. And so that's why I think that question asked by the native New Guinean is kind of around there, that it's the need to go get resources that promotes outward expansion and colonization. I'll stop talking so much.
Limited. Traders could only enter the port of Canton in southern China. The rules were strict and favored the Qing, and diplomatic liaison with the emperor was non-existent. Trade with the West was not essential for the dynasty, and Britain's first envoy to the Qing emperor would reveal that they saw no need for the inventions made possible by the Industrial Revolution. They were expensive and needless trinkets. The West's demands for Chinese goods, however, was immense. The British obsession with tea created a trade deficit between the two nations. The East India Company, who held a monopoly on British trade in China, were unable to import anything of want into Canton and would have to pay for goods in silver. This drained the precious silver reserves of the British government and frustrated traders who were unable to profit on both ways of the long voyage. It became of great importance to the East India Company and the British government that trade be equalized. Opium was a product that had existed in China throughout history, largely as a powderized painkiller to be mixed with tea. However, smoking opium allowed for a much more pleasurable and instantly more addictive experience. The East India Company in the latter half of the 18th century landed on exporting cheap opium from their territory in Bengal, but given the fact that opium was illegal in the Qing...
Are those opium? I have a much bigger screen over here to see. Is that all opium?
Dynasty, they would also enter the drug trafficking business, smuggling opium into Canton. The Qing's lack of any major navy and their corruptible officials in Canton saw the opium flow into China unchecked. The fad of opium smoking began in the upper classes and trickled down to all facets of Qing society, becoming an opium crisis. It wasn't long before the trade deficit had turned in the favor of Britain. Silver would begin leaving the Qing reserves at an unsustainable rate. The Daoguang Emperor's imperial court would debate legalization of opium, as a tax would secure the economy. But given
you're taking away so much of their capital in silver, and yet at the same time making them opium addicts, a lot of them. That'll weaken China because of a lot of opium addicts, epidemic of opium addicts, and the lack of money, and make it even easier for Britain to assert its dominance. Domino effect incoming.
Opium's poisonous effects on the population, there would be no consideration for legalization. Even despite the sustained ban, Canton became a bed of opium smuggling and addiction. Corrupt officials and wealthy European traders dominated the port city. A modification of the East India Company's Royal Charter would remove their monopoly on the trade in 1834, opening the door to all Westerners and worsening the crisis. It would take until 1838 for effective action to be put in place. The Daoguang Emperor appointed the incorruptible Lin Zexu as imperial commissioner. His task was to simply eradicate the opium trade. Lin Zexu would make an open letter to Queen Victoria. There is a class of evil foreigner that makes opium and brings it for sale, tempting fools to betray themselves merely in order to reap profit. The poisonous article is manufactured by certain devilish persons
like the cartel.
in places subject to your rule.
Cartels.
What is here forbidden to consume, your dependencies must be forbidden to manufacture. When that is done, not only will the Chinese be rid of this evil, but your people too will be safe.
Very wise.
The letter would never be allowed to reach the Queen. Lin would have opium supplies in Canton seized, entering warehouses and even boarding British ships. The Superintendent of Trade in China, Charles Elliot, attempted to prevent any escalation by convincing traders to hand over their stockpiles on the promise of eventual compensation. Lin would continue to have the opium publicly destroyed on the beaches and instruct...
What? That... Why not just stop importing it? I mean, that's like... Okay, you're getting rid of the problem of opium addicts by getting the opium and then destroying it, but then still having to pay the British for the opium? Like, okay, so you guys aren't going to come in and keep keep trading, so we're just going to buy it from you and destroy it. It's very unfair. And to bring up Hong Kong and things like that, from a Chinese perspective, I don't agree with a lot of China's human rights and freedom of the press, freedom of speech stuff, American values, but I also agree that countries should be able to do what they need to do without severe human cost or bad humanity decisions, humanity crisis. That a country should not be forced to adopt values and aspects of cultures that others deem less barbaric. I just think that the Hong Kong situation of Britain made a deal that like in 20 something that they would hand it over completely to China. If I'm China, I'm like, screw that. Like, the only reason you got Hong Kong in the first place is, I believe, is maybe even through these opium wars, shady ways. And so putting the human rights stuff aside and cultural differences between China and the U.S. and what we might consider authoritarian government, if I was China, I'd be like, yeah, sure, we'll hand it over in 2030 or whenever the agreed upon time is. I'm taking that now, like Hong Kong. But again, human rights abuses, you'd have to go in and take it, whatnot. I'm going off track, but
that the penalty for officials and foreign traders caught smuggling opium to be made death. Though obviously foreign traders would not agree to these terms. The high tensions only worsened when two British sailors would drunkenly and fatally bash a Chinese villager in July of 1839. Elliot quickly had the men arrested, paid compensation to the family, and would trial them by British law on his ship. Lin would obviously be infuriated by the clear violation of Chinese sovereignty and had any sale of food or supplies cut off to British ships. This eventuated in a small skirmish between British and Qing ships at Kowloon in September. 2 Qing soldiers would die, and the British would retrieve supplies for their sailors. Officials, however, reported back a decisive victory to the Emperor in what would be the first battle of the Opium Wars. Back in Britain, the Parliament would be in heavy debate on going to war over the opium trade. It was understood by the government and people that opium was illegal and destructive, but merchants and nationalists would argue for intervention on the grounds of protecting British trade and product. Military action would pass by a vote of 271.
Here's where I just have total support or neglect of the British in this point, and how the Chinese tend to view history, have a long view of history, and they're not going to forget this, they're not going to listen to British people, especially today, telling them what to do with land that they, I'm not talking about Taiwan. Taiwan's a whole different story, but Hong Kong, that, I'm not going to listen to the British if I'm Chinese after they got it through all these very nefarious ways. They're like, yeah, sure.
To 262 in January of 1840. The order was made that the Royal Navy should secure compensation for the millions of pounds sterling of destroyed opium enforce equal diplomatic relations with the Qing imperial court, and that an island trading post be acquired. So in June, a fleet would arrive to reinforce
the
Elliot's,
unequal treaties.
and they would make their way north to Zhoushan in the Yellow Sea. There, they captured Dinghai with relatively little opposition and took no casualties. The advanced military technology of the British could make easy work of outdated Chinese defences. Their rifles and artillery were leagues ahead of the Qing's swords, spears, old muskets, and ancient cannons, and their drilled professional soldiers made effective use of them. Elliot would use the capture of Dinghai to enter negotiations with Lin Zexu's replacement, Xishan. They moved negotiations to the Pearl River, the gateway of Canton, and withdrew from the Yellow Sea. The negotiations between the two men would last until January of 1841, where they had broken down. The Royal Navy in that time welcomed the arrival of further reinforcements, including the HMS Nemesis, a steam-powered iron warship, the first of its kind. It was used to capture 2 forts in the Pearl River, killing hundreds of Chinese, sinking a dozen Jonkers, and taking no casualties. These defeats would force Xishan back into negotiation. Both Elliot and Xishan would agree on £1 million in compensation, a direct diplomatic link between their two countries, and the cession of Hong Kong to Great Britain.
See, Hong Kong, I'm not saying that the Hong Kong stuff, that China's purely in the right, but I'm not commenting on recent stuff. I'm just saying in the terms of like, if I'm Chinese, of Great Britain in like 91 or 99, something like, I think 99, 98, saying, okay, fine, you can start to have Hong Kong back, but it's going to be separate but equal. If I'm China, I'm like, can I say that? Fudge. You know what I'm saying? Like, F you. Like, yeah, sure. You remember how you took Hong Kong in the first place? Again, don't want to come off as too pro-Chinese America. But, I mean, that just, you know.
When Xishan returned to the emperor with the terms, he was put to death, and Elliot would find himself dismissed given the lackluster compensation and the insignificance of Hong Kong. And so fighting would resume once again in February, with the British fleet working its way up through the Pearl River. Once the river was cleared of defences, the Navy would move on Canton in March, capturing the port and reopening it for trade. The Qing would gather soldiers outside of the city until they numbered 50,000 against the Brits' 6,000
Hold
men.
on.
They would attack, and for 10 days battle raged between the British.
Sorry, I lost my webcam. Sorry about that. Alrighty. My apology.
The Qing, and even the 50,000 against the Brits' 6,000 men. They would attack, and for 10 days battle raged between the British, the Qing, and even the Cantonese villages. It would subside on the 30th of May with a decisive British victory and the full occupation of Canton. In the end, the Qing would actually pay a ransom for the British to withdraw from Canton. Reports to the Emperor stated the battle had been a success, and the Imperial Court began to draw up plans to recapture Hong Kong from the stationed British garrison. Meanwhile, the Royal Navy decided they would travel north up the coast to place pressure on the capital of Beijing. The Navy worked its way up in a series of battles and blockades, even once again capturing Zhoushan. On the 14th of June 1842, the fleet made its way into the Yangtze River.
Yes, this is where I was talking about. I've heard of this, where, I mean, kudos to the British Navy just for being so superior in every way to almost everyone at the time. French, that's a few decades after Napoleon. The U.S. obviously, not until like post-Civil War, they a good Navy. They're so unchallengeable, and I think the same thing with a few centuries earlier with Cortez and the capture of who was it? Who was that Mayan or Aztec king? I forget, but just the fact that they were able to, I know they had, it's not like they had guns, but they had armor, they had horses, which in South America had not been seen, or would have been very intimidating. The ships can only bombard so much of the beach, but when you get going into the interior, I guess it was fear and just shock at like what these white men like looked like, and but just how they're able to just coast up to the emperor. And the same thing with here, how in a country of millions of people, how they're not just able to, yes, they're going to face many casualties at first, but overwhelm them by numbers.
The lifeblood of commerce in the empire. There, they would capture the city of Shanghai.
They make it to the emperor, right?
Opening into Nanking, the center of China's south. The Qing's military system was not equipped to deal with a threat from their shores. They had never faced an enemy so technologically advanced to make it feasible.
Was I wrong? Is this not the part where they do that?
And they had put little resources into a navy. The Brits were able to make their final maneuver in the war on the stronghold of Shenzhong. Outnumbering and easily outgunning the defenders, the British took another decisive victory, making Nanking vulnerable and completely severing China's north from its south. It was at this point the
Unequal
Daoguang
treaties.
Emperor became aware of the inaccuracy of his officials' reports and how dire the situation truly was. It was evident while China had been able to defend itself from threats for centuries, they were wholly unequipped for such a technologically superior enemy. The court would, however, instead blame the organization of the army, and the failings of their navy and military technology was downplayed.
That's a good point.
Negotiations made after the capture
Very good
of
point.
Shenzhong would lead to the Treaty of Nanking in August of 1842. The Brits would have several ports open to their trade and their illegal opium, and the Qing would be made to pay for the destroyed opium.
So that's a double loss, and it hasn't
to
even
half
gotten
of the-
to the second Opium War, which is the next video, which I will definitely watch. Thank you very much for the recommendation, guys. This channel, very cool channel.
Government's total yearly revenue. The territorial integrity of the Qing dynasty was also broken, as Hong Kong was officially ceded to the British Empire. The Qing were proven weak on an international stage, and American and French imperial vultures quickly descended to force the Qing into further unequal treaties. The West's imports and religion was able to flow into China, opening the kingdom to influences beyond its control, and there would be few attempts to right the failings of the Qing as the Daoguang Emperor passed and the Mandate of Heaven moved to his 19-year-old successor. Instability broke out across the Celestial Empire, and where there was weakness, the West would only continue to demand more. And if this video has left you demanding more 19th century Chinese history, well, one, that's a very specific thing to request, but also that's great because I have a documentary about tea and espionage and British people, and
I'll check out all that stuff, man, and I know you got another second Opium War video, which will probably be my next video if I don't squeeze in a Salmonella or History Matters vid or two in between. I'll also continue going on that Cuban Missile Crisis Goes History, Time Goes History playlist. And so thanks, guys, again for suggesting more videos, expanding out of just the History Matters Salmonella, kind of my two favorite channels, just cycling between the two. Love you guys. See you next time. Oh, check out these videos right here and here. Right over there. Here. Over there. All right. See you guys. Goodbye. Okay, now goodbye.